Hello and welcome to Rotted Reviews, and today I'm in a quandary, honestly. I'm going to be talking about the 2020 movie Mass Hysteria, and the reason that I'm in a quandary about this is this movie has not yet been released. I was sent a screener to this. I get sent screeners on a somewhat regular basis, and for the most part, 99 times out of 100, they're pretty obviously terrible. Honestly, it kind of gets to a weird point where I'm wondering, whether or not I should actually cover them. It makes doing reviews a little bit more inhibitive. I can't use footage from the video. A lot of times it's watermarked, and honestly, it's bad practice for a film that hasn't been released yet to be using footage from the screener. So I have to comply with a lot of things, and sometimes stick with not doing a review until a certain date, things like that. So it's somewhat restrictive, but at the same time, it's also a pleasure. It's a bit of an honor that people think okay, you might enjoy our film. Why don't you go ahead and watch it? Tell us what you think. So screeners have always been this weird place for me. Plus, also, I want to get more of them. I would love to be able to get on the screeners list for, say, Shudder, Netflix, so on and so forth. And so I was sent a screener to Mass Hysteria, and at the very least, I tried to give them a little bit of a look-see and watch the trailer, so on and so forth. And this one actually looked kind of cute. I basically always had this bit of a mantra, and if anybody approaches me on like a one-to-one individual basis, I always say the same exact thing. I don't promise a good review. I only promise an honest one. So I watched Mass Hysteria. It's going to be available on Vimeo and VOD options starting October 1st. And I am, like I said, in a quandary because although I'm glad that I received this, I'm glad that they gave me the opportunity to review it, I'm kind of having to fall back on I can't promise a good review. And in the case like this, that's not what's going to be happening here. Now, this movie was written by Jonathan Coleman and Christopher O'Connell, directed by Ariel Cimino and Jeff Ryan. And the basic premise of it is it's set in the town of Salem. It's a bit, it's around Halloween time. It's autumn. Tourists are coming in, and we have a small theater group that are trying to put on a bit of a historically accurate retelling of one of the witch trials. And their standard fare performance includes a little bit of audience interaction, treating them like one of the people that's putting them on trial, as the witch has her final say and says, I curse this town. She's not a witch, but at the same time, pretty pissed off about the whole situation and just fed up and say, you want to curse? Fine, here's a curse. And in the course of actually performing this play, the audience member that they participated with winds up dying in the middle of it.
Just kill her already!
May God give you blood to drink.
And that starts a situation where the actress that was playing the witch is now treated like a witch and has the town folks and so forth chasing after her in the theater troupe, and it turns into mass hysteria. This was, it looked cute, and this was billed as a horror comedy, and honestly, with things being what they are, I was really in the mood for a horror comedy. So it just really seemed to strike, exactly what I was looking for. It seemed like it was well polished enough. The acting performances in this movie, it was well done enough that, it sold the dialogue delivery. It felt somewhat natural. So, plus marks on that one. The special effects when it had it, the practical effects and, body gore and so forth, it was limited, but it was well done. So what's the problem? What was the issue that I might have had with this movie? Well, really what it comes down to is I don't know who it was trying to reach out to. The comedy came in with such a cutesy, folksy kind of lighthearted overtone that I really thought that it kind of fell into a place of a Hallmark movie, one of their specials of autumn kind of thing with the spooky witches and so forth, which is fine. There's a place for that. There's a market for that. There's an audience for that. Not my preferred thing, but there you go. I really didn't find a single solitary, real out loud laugh to be found. This was pretty much on a humor level, much like Sensible Chuckle, the movie. But at the same time, some of the darker territories that this movie managed to go down and some of the language and so forth would never make it onto a Hallmark channel. So it wound up in this weird place of softball comedy, softball horror even, but even so, more adult themes and more adult language that I just didn't really know exactly who it was speaking to. Comedy is a really tricky thing. To nail down what works, what doesn't, what's funny, what's not. I mean, it's called an art for a reason, and I just really don't think that this movie dialed that in. It didn't hone that portion of itself terribly well. A lot of times with horror comedy, we wind up with the funny aspects coming from the contrasting elements of foreground and background. Sometimes we will have foreground characters that are silly and slapsticky and over the top and have a sense of humor about everything, while in the background, shit is very serious and going wrong on a very serious horror level. And the dichotomy and the contrast between them is where the comedy is found. Oftentimes it's the reversal, where you have serious characters and goofy horror shit is happening around them and they're just in disbelief. Oftentimes it's a situation where tropes are re-examined and dissected and turned on their head to comedic effect. Tucker and Dale versus Evil is a fantastic example of that, but there's just countless others. Sometimes it's just actually taking the horrific elements, stripping away any semblance of scares, and just going for the most extreme gore possible, while at the same time maintaining levity of dialogue. It goes a wide range of different types, different gamuts, and different levels of execution, and the world is extraordinarily broad in this sense. But I would be lying if I said that this movie really seemed to nail down exactly what level of comedy it was going for, in contrast to the background elements of the plot of what these characters were going through. It was a cute enough concept, but the concept wasn't fleshed out enough to execute for a full movie. And when I say full movie, that's another thing, is this is way too long to be a short and way too short to be a feature length. This clocked in at 1 hour and 5 minutes long, putting it, like the horror and like the comedy, in this weird place of not really knowing what it's supposed to be. So although I won't say that this is a bad movie, because really, despite my criticism of it, I really, in my heart of hearts, believe that it is not a bad movie. It's also not one that I can really recommend that much. As much as it pains me to say, I think that this movie could have been fixed a significant amount by, instead of trying to brush things up and sharpen things up to appeal to a horror audience, if it actually toned things down. That would have been the better path, the easier path at the very least to take, is if it removed the foul language, toned down some of the gore, and actually did market it as a Hallmark special. Because that's really kind of what the feel of it is, at the very core of it. Just watching the characters interact with one another, watching them walk through the town, it really did feel like a spooky autumn Hallmark mystery. And I think it could have worked on that level if it hadn't been quite so raw in very odd, specific places. So I'm happy to give this an honest review, and I really hope this isn't treated as biting the hand that feeds me with these screeners, but I can't help but really delivering my full, honest thoughts on things. So thank you very much for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you on my next review. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.